Welcome to the Mindful Return podcast. I'm Kelly Tuttle, a retired neurology nurse practitioner and brain injury survivor. Together, we'll explore practical tools and real stories to help you rebuild focus, confidence, and a meaningful life after a brain injury. Hello, and welcome to the Mindful Return. Kelly Tuttle, your host, and I'm glad you have joined me. Today, we're going to talk about learning after a brain injury. So, before my car crash and my concussion, I used to be a really quick learner. And I used to love reading. I would read for hours and hours. And when I wanted to learn something, I looked to books. So that changed after my brain injury. And I had difficulty with remembering things that I would read. I went from being able to read for hours down to just being able to read for 5 or 10 minutes before I started forgetting what I was reading or getting dizziness or headaches or feeling really, really tired. So a dramatic change to what I was used to. And you might feel the same. So what I'm going to talk about in this episode is how after a brain injury, your reading processes can be knocked offline. And researchers believe after a brain injury, your memory is still intact. Your ability to learn is still intact, but your brain may not be able to organize or process the information or even retrieve it where it has filed it after you've learned it. It's not that you may feel like you're stupid. It's not that you're stupid. It's just that the processes to learn and read and so forth have just been disrupted. So while you're healing, especially early in your recovery, you will need to slow down how you absorb the information. When my speech therapist was coaching me on learning how to read and remember the things that I read, working on my memory, she was instructing me to be more intentional while I was reading and trying to learn. So that meant that I had to really slow down how rapid I was attempting to take in the information, and then stopping and taking a moment and intentionally attaching the new information to previous information that I had so that I could recall it later. So if you're struggling with your learning, definitely tap into your speech therapist for help with it. So while your brain is healing, you'll need to slow down how you absorb the new information because your learning brain processes have been slowed down, and it can be also a little glitchy. Even a tiny delay in taking in, processing, and storing information can make thinking and learning much harder. These small delays can make you feel like your thoughts are moving slowly. And if you try to take in information faster than your brain is able to process it, it can even shut your brain down as it gets overwhelmed. So think of it this way. In your brain, there's a sloth. And as you're trying to take in the information, there is a sloth that is managing the conveyor belt where the information you're taking in is in boxes. And the sloth, working as a sloth, slowly goes through the box, picks a piece of information, and then slowly files it. But in the process, all the boxes are piling up. They're falling on the floor, papers are flying everywhere, and only one part of that information you've been taking in gets filed. And then there is another sloth, and it goes to the file cabinet and pulls out that new information. And that new information may be in the correct spot or it may not be in the correct spot. But once it does grab it, then the sloth brings it to the front of your brain so that you can retrieve and review that information that you've just learned. And this is a very slow process, and it can be quite excruciating when you're in the middle of a conversation or trying to answer someone's question. But it is the way your brain is working right now as it's healing. So basically, your brain is in sloth mode right now, and you just need to slow down and be intentional about how you take in new information. So researchers have found that traumatic brain injury patients generally are able to learn new material, but the way they learn it might change. The other thing to remember is that your brain is also short on fuel and gas, and your brain is in the process of healing. And for it to heal, that takes more energy. Your brain also has lost a large number of mitochondria, the powerhouses of your brain cells. And less powerhouses means less energy for your brain. And what this means is that your brain's learning and memory processes aren't functioning as well because they're not getting the energy that they need to power them. So to recap, the brain's a little bit glitchy, the processing's been slowed down, and the filing system is off. And you are also low on the energy it takes to process these brain cognitive functions. So, what I like to do is share with you some of the strategies I used and have learned to help improve my learning processes as my brain was healing. The first thing you want to do, like I've said before, is slow the rate in which you are absorbing the new information. You want to slow your reading rate down, so how fast you read, and then try to read in short chunks. So maybe that might be just one sentence at a time or one paragraph at a time, then working your way up to one short chapter at a time. You'll want to take breaks to rest your brain and your eyes while you're learning. And so you may need to set alarms to remind you to take those breaks. And then while you're reading, it's really good, or trying to learn a new concept, it's really good to just stop and think about what you just read. This helps your brain process and store the new information. Two, you'll want to allow yourself more time to learn and give yourself a longer time frame to learn something new. So if you're working and having to complete training, requesting more time to complete the training is a reasonable disability accommodation that you can consider. And this is why I designed my online program, The Road to Recovery. With one purchase, you can have a lifetime access to the program, which allows you to learn from it at your own pace. My program is information that is in short video form with multiple free downloads, which you can keep to reference for a short review of what you've learned. You can find my online program on my website at kellytuttle.org. Strategy 3 is repetition. Repetition. Today I'm having a hard time with that word. Repetition is a helpful learning technique. So what does that look like? What's an example of repetition? And that would be repeating what you've read or listen to what you've read. And that could be either re-listening to it via video or an audiobook, or you reading it out loud to yourself. Strategy number 4. Write down what you are trying to learn. Writing by hand has shown to improve absorption, understanding, and remembering of new information. Writing notes also slows down the intake of new information so your healing brain can keep up. Then you will have notes or cards to review to help your brain absorb, process, and store the new information. So again, that's that repetition. You read it, you write it down, and then you review it later. And I'm sure a lot of you used this technique while you were in school and haven't had to need it after you graduated or started working. But now is the time, now that your brain is healing, to kind of go back onto those great supportive tools when it comes to learning. Strategy 5. So when you're trying to learn something new, limit distractions to support your focus and your concentration. And this means turning off music, podcasts, and the television when you're trying to learn something new or read. Turn off your phone and your computer notifications also, because they will break your focus. And then you'll be spending brain energy switching back and forth between notifications and then what you're trying to concentrate on. The other thing too is to try to work in a place where there's not a lot of traffic of people moving around. So if you're at work trying to do a training, it would be better to do it in a space where the foot traffic is the lowest and in a quiet space also. If you work in an open workspace, use noise canceling headphones to block background office distractions to help with your learning focus. You'll want to do this because if you rely on your brain to block out and filter out normal office noises, this is going to burn up your brain's energy trying to power that filter, which means less energy to power your brain's learning and memory processes. Increased fatigue can worsen brain injury symptoms like headaches, dizziness, and emotional irritability and outbursts. So try to use external tools to block out all those environmental intrusive noises and distractions to support your brain's focus and concentration while you're trying to learn something new. Strategy 8. So healing brains are easily distracted. So you want to support your learning by blocking visual distractions also. So some of the things that I did when I was working in an open workspace was I would move plants or furniture to block open views of the office space and of coworkers moving. And if I could take my training I would move to a more quieter space with less people in it and darker. It was a darker space also because I was extremely light sensitive when I was trying to learn new things. And the other thing that I also felt helpful was, for instance, if I wanted to read a research article, I would not read it off my computer at work. I would print the article up and then take the article to a quiet, darker space and read it. Because for me, reading off the computer with the light was difficult and it would just drain my brain energy battery quickly. And reading off of paper and text, it was so much better. And I could read a lot longer and absorb the information more easily. So you might want to think about that too. Strategy number 9. Don't multitask while you're trying to learn. And I kind of addressed this with the listening to music or the podcast, but to really just set aside amount of time for you where you tell yourself you're just going to focus on your reading or your learning. And when I was like writing my book, it was really hard to kind of build up my cognitive stamina to be able to sit and focus and write my book. And so what I would do is I would set my alarm clock, initially for like 10 minutes. And I would tell myself, okay, for these 10 minutes, I'm just going to write and focus on writing my book. And slowly over time, I increased that to 20 minutes and then 30 minutes. And that was a really good technique to just kind of help me focus and not multitask. So during the time frame, all I did was focus on the writing of my book, and I would not pick up my phone. I would not look at notifications, and I would stay in my seat and just for that time of frame. And I found that really helpful. And what I saw over time, I was able to sit longer and longer and longer and focus on getting my book written, which is great because it eventually helped me get my book written. So strategy number 10, set alarms. This will remind yourself to take breaks and have an alarm to remind you to get back to your learning also. And this will help you not get too distracted too long from your goals and the tasks that you wanted to accomplish when you sat down. So use alarms to remind you to take your breaks and to get back to work. Strategy number 11, print out important information. This way, when you print it out, it's easier to read, like I said before, but it's also a way of being able to use it as an external memory tool as your brain is healing so that you can reference it later when you need it. Strategy number 12, listen to the audio instead of reading. So after my brain injury, for some reason, it was harder to learn and read with my eyes than it was to listen. And that's really strange because what I understand is those are, when you listen to a book and when you read a book, they're kind of the activating the same brain processes. So one's not more advantageous than the other. So it's not cheating when you're learning by an audiobook. It's the same thing as if you were reading it. And so if you're able to try and learn by listening, I can't explain why that was for me, but it was that I was able to learn more and absorb more information from audiobooks. And I was able to listen to audiobooks and learn for longer periods of time as opposed to reading. And then the other great thing too about audiobooks and YouTube videos is while you're trying to learn is you can hit pause to take your notes or to rewind and re-listen to the information. And again, that's that repetition that you can use as a strategy to help you with your learning. And I did find YouTube extremely helpful when I was recovering and wanting to learn more complex things that were applicable to my profession, because it was the visual, being able to visually see graphs. I would put the closed captions on, visually read along with the person who was giving the lecture, and the pictures. It just really helped me with my learning, and the ability to hit pause, to take notes, or to rewind if my brain started to wander was really great. So I am a big proponent of learning new things from YouTube videos also. Now, I did hear from other brain injury survivors that audiobooks didn't work for them. So if they don't work for you, then that's okay. Do what works best for you. I also talked to a stroke survivor, and it was really interesting that he shared with me that he was unable to read after his stroke. And what he found worked for him was listening to audiobooks while he held the book in his hands and followed the words. And so the audio and the visual reading along with the audio really worked for him. So maybe that might be something that works for you. And what I would also do is after listening to the audiobook, I would get the textbook I could reference and go back to the textbook when I wanted to look for something that I had learned. Everyone has their own best way to learn, but how you learn after a brain injury may change. If you're struggling to learn after your brain injury, let your doctors know and request a referral to speech therapy or occupational therapy. Speech therapy can help you with the cognitive functions that might be the issue with your learning. Another thing to consider if you're struggling with learning is to make sure that your hearing and your vision are working properly. So I would recommend, if you're having a hard time with reading and memory, maybe you're seeing words being skipped, or you're having difficulty staying on the same line, or losing your place on the page visually, you might benefit from a referral to a behavioral optometrist. I did have difficulty with reading, and I noticed that I was having difficulty following the lines and skipping words. And I later was diagnosed with binocular vision dysfunction by a behavioral optometrist. And when my vision was corrected, then my reading was able to accelerate after that. And it was really great because then I had less fatigue, less headaches, and irritability when I was trying to read. And then consider having your hearing also evaluated, because you can have your hearing processes knocked offline with a brain injury. When you do see an audiologist, make sure you ask that they have experience treating traumatic brain injury survivors with hearing issues, so that you're seeing the right person. Not all audiologists are experienced with the unique changes that can happen after a brain injury. So you want to find one that is passionate about brain injury survivors and helping them figure out if their hearing processes are working well or not. So I just want you to remember today that you're not stupid, and you should be gentle with yourself. As time passes and you support your brain's learning, it will build lost connections and improve its learning process. So take care, get better, get stronger. You've been listening to the Mindful Return podcast with me, Kelly Tuttle. Subscribe wherever you listen and head to kellytuttle.org for brain injury recovery tools, free resources, and inspiration to help you return to work with confidence and hope.